Learn to love yourself. 1. Why self-love matters. Self-love is the foundation of everything. Your happiness, your confidence, your relationships, your decisions, and even your dreams. It's not about being selfish, arrogant, or putting yourself above others. Instead, self-love is about deeply valuing who you are, embracing your imperfections, and recognizing your worth without needing to prove it to anyone. It matters because the way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others treat you and how you navigate the world. When you love yourself, you stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop chasing validation from others because you already feel whole from within. You speak to yourself with kindness instead of criticism. You allow yourself to rest instead of burning out. And you give yourself permission to grow without shame or guilt. Self-love becomes your internal safety net, a place you can return to when the world feels uncertain or unkind. Without self-love, you're more vulnerable to self-doubt, fear, and comparison. You might constantly feel like you're not good enough no matter how much you achieve. You might shrink your dreams, overextend yourself to please others, or ignore your own needs in the hope of being accepted. But when you practice self-love, everything changes. You begin to trust your intuition, honor your boundaries, and make choices that align with your truth. You forgive yourself for past mistakes and celebrate your progress, no matter how small. And most importantly, you start to show up for yourself, not just when things are going well, but especially when they're not. This kind of love isn't dependent on success or approval. It's rooted in your willingness to see yourself as worthy simply because you exist. Self-love also creates healthier, more authentic relationships. When you treat yourself with love and respect, you naturally attract people who reflect that same energy. You no longer seek love out of desperation or loneliness, but from a place of wholeness. You give love freely, but not at the expense of your own well-being. You know when to walk away, when to stay, and when to speak your truth. Because your sense of worth no longer wavers based on someone else's opinion. And even beyond relationships, self-love fuels your courage. It helps you take risks, try new things, and pursue your passions. Because you believe in yourself even if the road is uncertain. You stop waiting for permission to live fully, and you begin creating a life that reflects who you really are. Practicing self-love is a journey, not a one-time event. It's built through small, daily acts of kindness, like giving yourself grace when you fall short, saying no when something doesn't feel right, and choosing thoughts that empower rather than tear you down. Journaling, affirmations, meditation, rest, creativity, and setting boundaries are all tools that nurture your self-love muscle. And while it may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years being hard on yourself, know that every step counts. You're not aiming for perfection. You're simply learning how to be on your own side. In a world that often teaches us to be more, do more, and prove more, self-love is a radical and necessary act. It's the gentle, unwavering reminder that you are already enough, and that everything good in life starts with how you treat you. When you love yourself, you stop surviving and start thriving. You live with more peace, more power, and more purpose. That's why self-love matters, because it changes everything from the inside out. 2. The roots of self-hatred. Self-hatred doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows slowly, often in the hidden corners of our minds, fed by painful experiences, harsh words, unmet expectations, and deep emotional wounds. At its core, self-hatred is a learned belief, not a truth. It begins when we internalize messages that tell us we are not enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not lovable enough, not successful enough. These messages can come from many places: critical parents or teachers, bullying peers, media that sets impossible standards, or even traumatic experiences that left us feeling ashamed or powerless. Over time, we begin to absorb these outside voices and make them our own inner dialogue. We start to believe that our mistakes define us, that our worth depends on perfection, or that we are broken beyond repair. And when we carry these false beliefs for long enough, they begin to form a toxic identity, a version of ourselves built on shame, guilt, and self-rejection. The roots of self-hatred often take hold in childhood, a time when our sense of self is still forming and we are most vulnerable to influence. A child who is constantly criticized, ignored, or compared to others begins to question their value. They don't just think, "Something is wrong with what I did." They begin to believe, "Something is wrong with me." And when love feels conditional, only given when we achieve, behave, or look a certain way, we may grow up thinking we have to earn our right to be loved or accepted. This belief can carry into adulthood, where we become our own harshest critics. We punish ourselves for not being perfect. We tear ourselves down before anyone else can. We feel unworthy of happiness, love, or success, and we may sabotage the good things that come our way because deep down, we believe we don't deserve them. Cultural and societal pressures also feed self-hatred. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be more, do more, look better, and achieve faster. Social media often highlights only the best moments of others' lives, making us feel like we're always falling behind. When we compare our real, messy human lives to the filtered highlight reels we see online, it's easy to feel like we're not measuring up. This constant comparison can lead to feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and deep inner criticism. We begin to chase perfection, thinking it will finally make us feel worthy. But the more we chase it, the more we lose touch with our authentic selves. The pressure to be someone we're not becomes exhausting, and eventually, we may turn our frustration inward, blaming ourselves for not being enough. Another root of self-hatred is emotional suppression. When we don't have safe spaces to express our pain, sadness, anger, or fear, we may turn those emotions inward. Instead of learning how to feel and process them, we judge ourselves for having them in the first place. We begin to see our feelings as weaknesses and our struggles as proof of failure. This inner repression creates a war within, a part of us that is hurting and needs compassion, fighting against a voice that tells us we should be stronger, better, or different. And without healing, this cycle continues, making it harder and harder to feel self-compassion or peace. But the truth is, self-hatred is not who you are. It is a symptom of unhealed pain, misunderstood experiences, and inherited beliefs that never belonged to you in the first place. It can be unlearned. With time, awareness, and support, you can trace those roots back to where they began and start to gently pull them out. You can replace judgment with understanding, criticism with care, and shame with self-acceptance. You can learn to speak to yourself with the kindness you may never have received as a child. Healing from self-hatred isn't quick or easy, but it is possible, and every step you take toward self-love, no matter how small, is a step toward reclaiming your truth. You were never meant to hate yourself. You were meant to grow, to heal, and to remember that you are enough, just as you are. 3. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of love. Not because of what you've done, how you look, or how much you've achieved, but simply because you exist. Your worth is not something you have to earn, prove, or beg for. It is already inside you, woven into the fabric of your being, from the moment you were born. So many people grow up believing they must be perfect, successful, always strong, or constantly giving to others in order to be lovable. But the truth is, love doesn't require perfection. Real love sees beyond the surface. It sees your heart, your intentions, your struggles, and your humanity. Even if you've made mistakes, even if you've felt broken, even if others have made you feel small or unworthy in the past, you are still deserving of love, compassion, and belonging. It's easy to forget this when you've been hurt. Rejection, abandonment, criticism, and betrayal can leave deep scars, making you question your value. Maybe someone once made you feel like you had to change who you were to be accepted. Maybe you've spent years comparing yourself to others, believing they are more lovable than you. Or maybe you've been so used to giving love to others that you've forgotten how to give it to yourself. But no matter what your past looks like, your worth has never disappeared. It may have been buried under pain, silence, or self-doubt, but it's still there, waiting for you to uncover it. Love begins to flow more freely into your life when you start with yourself. When you stop trying to become someone else and start embracing the person you already are. Being worthy of love doesn't mean you'll never struggle, never feel lonely, or never face rejection. It means that even when those things happen, they do not define you. Your worth is not tied to anyone's opinion, nor is it something that can be taken away. When you begin to accept this truth, something powerful happens. You start setting healthier boundaries, choosing relationships that uplift rather than drain you, and releasing the toxic belief that you must earn love through self-sacrifice or constant proving. You begin to surround yourself with people and experiences that reflect the love you've learned to give yourself, and you become more gentle with yourself, more understanding, more forgiving, more kind. The world tries to convince us that we must be more to be worthy, more beautiful, more successful, more likable. But the deepest, most lasting love comes not from meeting these impossible standards, but from knowing that you are enough, even in your quietest, rawest, most vulnerable moments. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be real. Love grows in the places where you are authentic, where you let your walls down and allow yourself to be seen. not as a flawless version of yourself, but as a human being who is doing their best. So take a moment today and remind yourself, you are worthy of love. Not someday, not when you've changed, not when you've fixed yourself, but right now, just as you are. You are worthy of gentle words, warm hugs, deep connections, and unconditional acceptance. And as you continue your journey through healing, growth, and rediscovery, may you carry this truth with you like a light, that you are lovable, valuable, and deserving of every good thing life has to offer. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And who you are is already enough. 4. Metta, loving kindness meditation. Metta, also known as loving kindness meditation, is a powerful and heart-opening practice that gently teaches us how to cultivate love, not only for ourselves but for all beings, without conditions or judgment. The word metta comes from the ancient Pali language and means benevolence, loving kindness, or unconditional friendliness. At its core, metta is about softening the heart. It's about letting go of bitterness, anger, or self-criticism, and replacing those heavy emotions with warmth, connection, and care. In a world that often feels rushed, divided, or demanding, metta is a quiet, steady reminder that kindness is not just a feeling. It's a practice, a choice, and a way of living that begins from within. The practice of metta is beautifully simple, yet profoundly transformative. It begins by finding a quiet space, closing your eyes, and directing kind, compassionate phrases first toward yourself. You might silently repeat words like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." These phrases are not magical incantations. They are intentions. Even if you don't fully believe them at first, repeating them gently and consistently helps to rewire your inner world, dissolving layers of self-judgment and opening the door to self-love. Once you've sent metta to yourself, you gradually extend those same wishes outward, to someone you love, then to someone neutral, like a coworker or stranger, and eventually, even to someone you find difficult or have conflict with. Finally, you send loving kindness to all beings everywhere, embracing the entire world in your heart. What makes metta so special is that it works from the inside out. Many people carry deep wounds, pain from the past, feelings of unworthiness, or resentment that they've never fully processed. Metta doesn't ask you to ignore that pain. Instead, it gently invites you to meet it with compassion. Over time, this practice helps soften the sharp edges of emotional suffering. It makes it easier to forgive. Not because others always deserve it, but because you deserve peace. It also helps reduce anxiety, loneliness, and anger by shifting your focus from fear and judgment to understanding and connection. Even scientific studies have shown that regular metta practice can improve mental well-being, increase empathy, and even reduce physical pain. Metta also teaches us that love is not a limited resource. We often think we must reserve our kindness for those who have earned it, or we fear that giving love to others will somehow take away from our own supply. But metta reveals a deeper truth. The more love you offer, the more your capacity for love grows. It's like a candle lighting other candles, each one spreading light without losing its own flame. And by practicing loving kindness for all, we begin to dissolve the illusion of separation. We start to see that beneath our differences, every person, no matter their background, choices, or struggles, shares the same wish: to be happy, to be safe, and to be loved. Metta is not always easy, especially when sending it to those who have hurt you or when you feel numb or closed off inside. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. It doesn't require that you feel loving at every moment. It only asks that you show up with sincerity and an open heart. Even a few minutes of metta a day can begin to shift your inner landscape. It creates space inside you for healing, patience, and peace. And over time, you may notice that you're quicker to forgive, slower to judge, and more able to face life's challenges with grace. In a world that often values strength, achievement, or control, metta quietly reminds us of a deeper power, the power of kindness, of tenderness, of holding yourself and others with gentleness. It is a daily invitation to reconnect with your true nature, not as someone who is broken or lacking, but as someone who is already whole and capable of infinite love. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, disconnected, or unsure of your worth, try this simple practice. Close your eyes, take a breath, and repeat, "May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be loved." You might be surprised how much begins to change, inside and all around you. 5. Mindfulness and self-compassion. Mindfulness and self-compassion are two powerful inner practices that, when woven together, can create deep healing, emotional resilience, and a more peaceful relationship with yourself. At its heart, mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment with gentle, non-judgmental awareness. It's about noticing what's happening inside you, your thoughts, feelings, and body sensations, without getting swept away by them or labeling them as good or bad. Instead of reacting automatically to stress, pain, or self-criticism, mindfulness teaches you to pause, observe, and respond with clarity and calm. Now imagine pairing that calm awareness with self-compassion, which is the act of treating yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding you would offer a dear friend who is suffering. When life gets hard, when you make a mistake, or when your inner critic starts shouting, self-compassion reminds you that it's okay to be human, and that you still deserve love and support, even in your most vulnerable moments. Many people grow up believing they must be hard on themselves to succeed or improve. They carry the burden of perfectionism, harsh self-talk, and guilt, thinking this will make them stronger. But in reality, this constant inner pressure often leads to burnout, anxiety, and low self-worth. That's where mindfulness and self-compassion can be life-changing. Mindfulness helps you become aware of your pain, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical, without ignoring it or pushing it away. It teaches you to stay present, to breathe through discomfort, and to truly see yourself. Self-compassion steps in as the comforting voice that says, "It's okay to feel this. You're not alone. This doesn't make you less worthy." Together, these practices create a safe inner space where healing can happen, not through force or judgment, but through understanding, acceptance, and love. When you begin to practice mindfulness and self-compassion regularly, you may notice subtle yet powerful shifts. You start to recognize patterns, how your mind reacts when you feel anxious, how you speak to yourself when you fail, how quickly you compare yourself to others. Instead of getting lost in these patterns, you start creating space between your thoughts and your responses. You might catch yourself in a spiral of self-doubt and choose instead to pause, take a deep breath, and say something kind to yourself like, "I'm doing the best I can right now." That one small act can change your entire day. Over time, you build an inner foundation that is steady, gentle, and kind, so that even when storms come, you have a place to stand. Self-compassion also doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook or avoiding responsibility. It's not about making excuses. It's about acknowledging your mistakes while still recognizing your humanity. It allows you to grow from a place of encouragement rather than punishment. Instead of saying, "I failed, I'm worthless," you learn to say, "I struggled, and that's okay. What can I learn from this? How can I take care of myself as I move forward?" This shift in inner language helps reduce shame and increases your ability to bounce back from setbacks. In a world that often pushes you to be constantly productive, perfect, and unshakably strong, mindfulness and self-compassion offer a radical yet gentle alternative. To slow down, to breathe, to notice, and to care. They invite you to reconnect with yourself in a way that's honest and loving, even in moments when you feel broken or lost. And the more you practice, the more you realize that you don't need to wait until you're fixed to be kind to yourself. You can begin right now exactly as you are. That kindness offered moment by moment is where healing begins. So next time you find yourself overwhelmed, anxious, or consumed by self-judgment, try placing your hand over your heart and taking a mindful breath. Whisper to yourself, "This is hard, and I'm here for myself." In that simple act lies the essence of mindfulness and self-compassion. Being present with your pain and meeting it with love. Over time, this practice can transform not only how you see yourself, but how you walk through the world, with more patience, gentleness, and peace. 6. Letting go of comparison and ego. Letting go of comparison and ego is one of the most freeing and transformative steps you can take in your journey toward inner peace and authentic self-worth. Comparison often begins quietly, almost automatically. You see someone achieving something, looking a certain way, or living a life that seems better than yours, and without realizing it, you begin to question your own value. The ego steps in and says, "You're behind. You're not enough. You need to prove yourself." This constant measuring of your worth against others becomes a trap, one that steals your joy, clouds your judgment, and creates a never-ending cycle of dissatisfaction. But here's the truth. Comparison and ego are illusions. They are based on fear and scarcity, not truth or love. They tell you there's only so much success, beauty, or happiness to go around, when in reality, everyone is on their own path, moving at their own pace, with their own unique gifts to offer the world. The ego thrives on labels, achievements, and external validation. It wants to be better, faster, more impressive. It wants to win. But real growth doesn't happen in the spotlight of comparison. It happens in the quiet moments of self-reflection, honesty, and surrender. Letting go of ego doesn't mean giving up your goals or self-respect. It means loosening your grip on the false identity that says your worth depends on how you appear instead of who you truly are. It's learning to shift from seeking to outshine others to striving to be your most honest self. It's realizing that another person's success is not your failure, and that being inspired by others is far more powerful than feeling threatened by them. When you let go of comparison and ego, something beautiful happens. You begin to appreciate life as it really is, not as a competition, but as a shared human experience. You see people not as rivals, but as fellow travelers. You no longer feel the need to wear a mask, to be perfect, or to constantly prove yourself. You become more at ease, more grateful, more connected. You start to measure your life not by how much you've won, but by how deeply you've lived, how authentically you've loved, and how gently you've treated yourself and others. You realize that your uniqueness isn't something to hide. It's something to celebrate. Letting go is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It means catching yourself when you start to compare and gently choosing a different thought. It means pausing when the ego wants to react and instead choosing stillness, understanding, or compassion. Sometimes it means stepping away from environments like social media that feed insecurity. Other times, it means turning inward and asking, what am I really seeking here? What pain or fear is beneath this need to be better? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are also healing. As you build this awareness, you'll start to feel lighter. You'll begin to trust that you are already enough, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. Ultimately, letting go of comparison and ego is an invitation to live more freely, more joyfully, and more truthfully. It's choosing self-acceptance over self-judgment, presence over pressure, and compassion over competition. And when you do this, when you return to the simple truth that you are valuable, lovable, and whole just as you are, you not only free yourself, but you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror of peace in a world that is often chasing shadows. And that, perhaps, is the greatest success of all. 7. Healing the inner critic. Healing the inner critic is one of the most profound and compassionate acts you can offer yourself, because this voice, often harsh, judgmental, and relentless, has likely been with you for a very long time. The inner critic is that part of your mind that whispers or shouts things like, "You're not good enough," "You always mess things up," or "No one will love you unless you're perfect." It may sound like your own voice, but it often originates from the past. Echoes of criticism from parents, teachers, society, or experiences where you felt shamed, unloved, or not enough. Over time, these messages sink in and take root. They become a pattern of self-talk so familiar that you might not even question it. But here's the truth. This voice, no matter how convincing it sounds, is not the real you. It is a learned defense mechanism, not a reflection of your true worth. Healing the inner critic doesn't mean silencing it through force or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it requires understanding, patience, and a willingness to listen. Yes, even to the painful parts. This voice developed because it believed it was keeping you safe. In its own twisted way, it thought that if it criticized you first, you wouldn't be hurt by others. If it demanded perfection, maybe you'd never be rejected. That doesn't make the voice right, but it does mean it's coming from a place of fear, not truth or malice. To begin healing, you must approach this inner critic not as your enemy, but as a wounded part of yourself that needs love, boundaries, and a new role. The first step is awareness. Start noticing when your inner critic shows up, what it says, when it says it, and how it makes you feel. Don't fight it. Observe it. Write down its patterns. Often just bringing it into the light begins to weaken its grip. Next, bring in self-compassion. When the critic says, "You failed again," try responding gently with something like, "I made a mistake, and that's okay. Everyone does. I'm learning and growing." This may feel strange at first, especially if you've spent years believing that being hard on yourself was the only way to stay motivated. But over time, compassion proves far more effective than cruelty. When you treat yourself with kindness, you begin to heal old wounds instead of covering them with shame. Another powerful practice is to reparent yourself. Imagine the critic is a scared child who learned to be critical to survive. Then imagine yourself as the wise, loving adult saying, "You don't have to protect me like this anymore. I'm safe now. I'm allowed to make mistakes and still be worthy of love." This internal shift creates space for a new voice to grow inside you. A nurturing, supportive voice that encourages instead of condemns. Slowly, the critic becomes less dominant, and your inner world becomes a more peaceful and empowering place to live. Also, surrounding yourself with positive influences, books, people, affirmations, therapy, or mindfulness practices can help retrain your mind. Healing the inner critic is not about perfection. It's about creating a relationship with yourself based on trust, acceptance, and understanding. It's about transforming self-judgment into self-awareness and turning inner conflict into inner care. In the end, healing the inner critic is about reclaiming your inner space. It's about choosing not to live under a voice that constantly puts you down, but instead stepping into the truth that you are already enough. You are more than your mistakes, more than your fears, more than the false standards the world has tried to impose on you. You are a whole, evolving, and deeply worthy human being. And every time you meet your inner critic with kindness instead of anger, you take another step toward lasting healing and a more loving relationship with yourself. 8. Embracing impermanence and growth. Embracing impermanence and growth is a gentle but powerful shift in how we relate to life, ourselves, and the world around us. It means understanding, deeply and fully, that everything in life is temporary. Emotions rise and fall, people come and go, seasons change, and even the version of you that exists today is different from who you were a year ago or even yesterday. At first, the idea of impermanence can feel unsettling, especially when we try to hold tightly to the things we love or fear the unknown. But when you stop resisting change and begin to accept that nothing is fixed or permanent, you open yourself up to a more peaceful and meaningful way of living. Impermanence reminds us that no failure lasts forever, that pain softens with time, and that even in the darkest moments, new beginnings are always quietly forming. Growth, then, becomes a natural result of this truth. When you stop expecting life to stay the same or demanding that you always have it all figured out, you begin to treat yourself with more patience and understanding. You realize that it's okay not to be perfect, because life isn't about arriving at a final version of yourself. It's about continually unfolding, learning, and becoming. Like a tree that grows through seasons, sometimes blooming, sometimes shedding leaves, your journey will have highs and lows, progress and pauses. Growth is not always visible or fast. Sometimes it happens slowly, in quiet moments, in the background of everyday life. But it is always happening. Every challenge, every mistake, and every triumph adds a new layer to who you are. When you embrace growth, you stop fearing change and start trusting in your own ability to adapt, heal, and thrive. To live with the awareness of impermanence is also to live more fully. You begin to savor the present, cherishing a conversation, a smile, a moment of stillness, because you understand it won't last forever. This awareness doesn't make you sad. It makes you grateful. It teaches you to let go of things when it's time, not out of defeat, but with a quiet confidence that new doors will open. It helps you forgive yourself more easily, knowing that who you were yesterday doesn't have to define who you are today. It also helps you appreciate the people in your life more deeply, because you no longer take their presence for granted. You begin to treat every experience, good or bad, as part of your evolution, not as something to escape or fix, but as something to learn from and grow through. In practical terms, embracing impermanence and growth might mean letting go of rigid expectations, practicing mindfulness to stay rooted in the now, and reminding yourself regularly that it's okay to evolve. It means understanding that emotions, identities, and even dreams can shift, and that this is not a failure, but a sign that you are alive and becoming. It may also involve unlearning the pressure to have all the answers and instead adopting a mindset of curiosity. What can I learn from this? How am I changing? What do I need now in this chapter of my life? Ultimately, embracing impermanence and growth is about choosing to live in harmony with the nature of life itself. It's about allowing things to come and go, not with fear, but with faith that you are always moving forward, even when it doesn't feel like it. You begin to carry yourself with more gentleness, more humility, and more courage. And in doing so, you discover the beauty in becoming, not perfect, but whole, real, and always growing. 9. The middle way to self-love. The middle way to self-love is a path of balance, wisdom, and gentle honesty. A way of caring for yourself that avoids the extremes of harsh self-criticism on one side and unhealthy indulgence or denial on the other. It's not about pretending you're perfect or ignoring your flaws. nor is it about constantly pushing yourself to be better because you believe you're not enough. Instead, the middle way invites you to meet yourself exactly where you are, with kindness in one hand and accountability in the other. It asks you to listen to your own needs without judgment, to respect your limits while still encouraging growth, and to love yourself as a whole person, not just when you're achieving, improving, or succeeding, but also when you're struggling, resting, or simply being. In daily life, the middle way to self-love means recognizing that you are a work in progress, and that's completely okay. You can strive to learn and improve, but you don't need to be at war with yourself to get there. If you make a mistake, instead of beating yourself up, you gently ask, "What can I learn from this?" And then move forward without shame. If you're tired or overwhelmed, you give yourself rest. Not because you're giving up, but because you understand that caring for your well-being is part of loving yourself. It's about honoring both your humanity and your potential, recognizing that real love isn't rigid or conditional. It's supportive, patient, and wise. The middle way also teaches you to let go of the pressure to constantly feel self-love as a dramatic, euphoric emotion. True self-love isn't always loud or visible. It often looks like small choices made every day, setting boundaries, forgiving yourself, choosing nourishing food, speaking kindly to yourself in your mind, and saying no when something doesn't feel right. Sometimes self-love means making difficult decisions that serve your future, even if they're uncomfortable now. Other times it means being still, holding space for your feelings, and accepting that some days are harder than others. This balanced approach can be especially healing if you've been conditioned to believe that love must be earned or that you're only worthy when you're achieving. The middle way challenges that by offering a new truth. Your worth is not based on performance. It's inherent. You were born worthy of love, and though life may have buried that truth under layers of fear, trauma, or rejection, the middle way helps you gently peel those layers away, not in haste, but with compassion. Walking the middle way to self-love doesn't mean you'll never struggle again. It means you'll stop abandoning yourself when you do. You'll learn to stay present with your imperfections without letting them define you. You'll discover that the most powerful love isn't the kind that comes from the outside world. It's the quiet, consistent love you offer yourself from within. This love doesn't need to be loud to be real. It simply needs to be true. And when you walk this path with gentleness, honesty, and balance, you begin to feel at home in your own heart, finally and for real. 10. Daily self-love practices from Buddhist teachings. Daily self-love practices inspired by Buddhist teachings offer a deep, compassionate, and sustainable way to care for your inner world. Not by inflating the ego or chasing constant positivity, but by returning again and again to presence, acceptance, and kindness. In Buddhism, self-love is not about self-centeredness. It's about understanding your true nature, recognizing your own suffering with compassion, and treating yourself with the same tenderness you would offer to a dear friend. It starts with mindfulness, the foundation of all Buddhist practice. Each day, even for just a few minutes, you can sit quietly, breathe naturally, and bring gentle attention to your thoughts and emotions. You don't judge them or try to change them. You simply observe. This is me, in this moment, and that's okay. This act of presence alone is a radical form of self-love, because it teaches you to stay with yourself, even when you're feeling messy, anxious, or imperfect. Another core practice is metta bhavana, or loving-kindness meditation. This beautiful tradition involves silently repeating phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." At first, these words might feel awkward or insincere, especially if your inner critic is loud. But over time, repeating them slowly rewires your mind to respond with compassion instead of criticism. Metta is not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way. It's about planting seeds of kindness in your heart. You can also extend these wishes to others. Friends, strangers, even those you struggle with. This helps soften the walls of separation and reminds you that everyone is doing their best to be free from suffering, just like you. Non-attachment, another key Buddhist concept, is also essential to daily self-love. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you stop clinging to impossible standards, fleeting emotions, or external validation. When you let go of the need to always be better or to constantly please others, you make space for deeper peace and authenticity. Each day, practice noticing when you are grasping too tightly to outcomes, appearances, or self-judgments, and gently remind yourself, this too shall pass. In doing so, you learn to love yourself in a more grounded, lasting way, not because things are perfect, but because you're learning to trust the flow of life. Right speech and right thought, two parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, can also become daily self-love rituals. Be mindful of how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Are your inner words kind, honest, and supportive? Or are they filled with blame and doubt? Replace harsh internal dialogue with words that uplift and soothe. You can also set small intentions in the morning. Today, I will treat myself gently, or today, I will pause and breathe before reacting. These little practices, repeated consistently, build a strong foundation of inner stability and self-worth. Finally, Buddhism teaches impermanence and compassion for all beings, including yourself. You begin to see that suffering is a part of life, but it doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. When you practice self-love through this lens, you stop seeing your struggles as signs of failure and start viewing them as opportunities for deeper understanding and connection. You become more patient with your process, more accepting of your flaws, and more appreciative of your efforts. Daily self-love, through Buddhist eyes, is not a grand performance. It is a quiet, steady return to presence, a nurturing of your own heart, and a choice, again and again, to walk with compassion, not just toward others, but toward yourself. Over time, these practices don't just help you feel better. They help you become more whole, more peaceful, and more awake to the truth of your own inherent worth. 11. Real Buddhist stories of transformation. Real Buddhist stories of transformation remind us that profound change doesn't always begin with dramatic events. It often starts in silence, in suffering, or in the quiet recognition that something inside us needs healing. One powerful example is the story of Angulimala, a feared bandit who had once lived a life of great violence and darkness. His name literally means garland of fingers, because he wore a necklace made from the fingers of those he had killed. But when he encountered the Buddha, something extraordinary happened. Instead of responding with fear or anger, the Buddha looked at him with deep compassion. He saw not just a murderer, but a human being caught in the flames of ignorance and suffering. That single moment of recognition, being seen not as a monster, but as someone capable of redemption, transformed Angulimala. He renounced his violent life, became a monk, and later reached enlightenment. His story teaches us that no one is beyond change, and that even the deepest wounds can heal when met with compassion and wisdom. Another real-life transformation comes from Jetavana Monastery, where a woman named Kisa Gotami sought the Buddha after losing her only child. Grief-stricken, she begged the Buddha to bring her child back to life. He told her he could, if she could find a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. Eagerly, she searched from door to door, but every family told her the same story. Someone had died there, too. Slowly, she realized that death was a part of life for everyone, not just her. This understanding didn't take away her grief, but it helped her open her heart to the universal nature of loss. Kisa Gotami eventually became a follower of the Buddha and found peace not by erasing her pain, but by accepting it as part of the human experience. Her transformation reminds us that healing often comes not from escaping suffering, but from seeing we are not alone in it. Even in modern times, there are countless stories of transformation inspired by Buddhist practice. People struggling with anxiety, depression, addiction, or identity crises have found new life through the teachings of mindfulness, compassion, and non-attachment. A man facing years of anger and resentment turned to daily meditation and metta, loving kindness practice. At first, his thoughts fought back. He felt foolish, even resistant. But with time, his heart began to soften. He could look at those who hurt him, not with hate, but with understanding. He forgave others and himself, not because they deserved it, but because he no longer wanted to carry the burden of that pain. His peace didn't arrive overnight, but it grew steadily through his practice, like a lotus blooming in muddy water. These stories show us that Buddhist transformation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming present, compassionate, and real. It's about turning toward our suffering instead of away from it. It's about seeing that even the darkest places in our hearts can become fertile ground for awakening. Whether through ancient tales or modern lives, Buddhist stories echo the same truth. Change is always possible, healing is always within reach, and the path to peace is walked one mindful step at a time. 12. Final reflection: you are enough. In the end, after all the searching, learning, healing, and growing, the most important truth you can carry with you is this: you are enough, just as you are. Not when you lose weight, not when you get the perfect job, not when everyone approves of you, not when you've finally fixed all the parts of yourself that you think are broken. Right here, in this very moment, with your imperfections, your wounds, your uncertainties, and your quiet strengths. You are already enough. This doesn't mean you won't continue to evolve or strive to be better. Growth is part of life. But your worth is not something you have to earn or prove. It is something you were born with. It has always been inside you, even in the moments you doubted it most. Many of us spend years, sometimes decades, chasing love, success, or validation, believing that if we just do more, achieve more, or become someone else, then we'll finally be worthy. But that chase often leads to exhaustion, disconnection, and shame. True peace begins when we stop running and start turning inward, when we soften enough to hear the quiet truth beneath all the noise. You are whole, not because you're flawless, but because you are human. You feel, you try, you fall, you rise again. And that, in itself, is a beautiful kind of strength. Being enough isn't about meeting the world's expectations. It's about honoring your own truth and recognizing the quiet power in simply being you. This reflection is a gentle invitation to lay down the heavy burden of comparison and self-doubt, to stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" or "Am I good enough?" and instead start affirming, "I am enough." It's about learning to sit with yourself in kindness, to look into your own eyes and say, "You're doing your best, and I see you." It's about realizing that your flaws don't cancel out your light. They are part of what makes you real and relatable. Even when you feel like you've made no progress, even when you're struggling to get through the day, even when your heart is tired, your value doesn't disappear. It remains steady, like the sky behind the clouds. You are a living, breathing reminder that being human is a sacred thing, not something to hide, but something to embrace. You are enough, not because you've checked off every box on some invisible list, but because you are here, still growing, still trying, still showing up. And that, dear soul, is more than enough. So take a deep breath, place a hand over your heart, feel your own presence. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of love, peace, or happiness. You already are, just as you are, always.